To grow yourself and your team, you need to develop patience and persistence. That's this week on the Badass Agile podcast. Greetings, team. Welcome to the Badass Agile podcast. I'm your host, Chris Williams. Hey, everybody. Great to see you. Thank you for being in the room. Thank you for staying with me these past 4 years. I'm happy you're here. I really want to focus on patience and persistence this week because I think those are character traits that we rarely talk about, we rarely speak about, and we do a bad job of transmitting in the community. And before we get into it, let's take a moment to remember why we're here. To create an elite tribe of leaders who truly serve their clients and communities by doing what matters and what works, relentlessly chasing value and excellence like a badass. There's so many resources out there about what you need to do to be agile, but we focus on who you need to become in order to lead teams. So let's hammer down those fundamentals to create a truly unique and powerful force in this industry. And just remember, if this helps you, tell your friends. Now, although the industry would like you to believe that the greatest delivery and performance are just days away, just one more course, just one more webinar, one more conference, the really good stuff, truth be told, takes time. In the beginning, we all have to find our feet. See, at the bottom of the hill, everything is a climb. If you can't push consistently upward and maintain and sustain that upward progress, gravity will pull you right back down. In fact, a new team, you might have seen this before, might even resist the ascent in the first place, scurrying off the base of the mountain back to their cubicles so they can stay out of sight long enough to privately fall back to the way we've always done things. In the beginning, there's a lot of frustration and impatience when results don't come. Things don't seem to be working, and that creates a feeling of panic, a feeling of loss of safety. And despite all of the marketing materials on Agile or Scrum, this just doesn't feel better yet. This doesn't feel good at all. The tension, the doubt, the dissent are palpable. In the beginning, you, as a leader, will deliver less than you're capable of. So you start to question if you're worthy. You'll question if this is the right path for you. You'll question if you have the capability and the capacity to truly lead teams to their best performance. Okay, there's two things you need to do when this happens. Number one, be patient. And number two, be persistent. The following statement is true for you as a leader and for every single member of your team. Your character as a human being is largely determined by how you show up and handle confusion, disarray, and failure to perform, not just at the beginning of an initiative or project, but throughout your development personally, and in fact throughout the extent of your career. Let's talk about patience first. One of the things that's hardest for a Scrum Master or coach to do is to watch your teams go through the motions and do things incorrectly or badly at first. This is perfectly natural. But here's the truth. If you try to over-instruct or over-coach, they're going to get confused, they're going to get overwhelmed, and that won't help them perform at their best. So in the beginning, you can do Herculean things to set them up, coach them, train them, give the info that they need to do the job well, and they'll remember about 10 or 20% of it. And that has to be okay. Let them get comfortable with the things they're comfortable with first, and then grow them. But that won't happen in a week or a sprint or even 2 or 3. You have to be cool with letting them learn, discover, and grow incrementally over time. The second thing you need to do that requires patience is to let them fail, sometimes badly, which means you might have to sit through a couple of sprints where they're absolutely not doing the right thing, where they're not taking your counsel, they're not listening, they're not quote unquote being agile, so they haven't adopted the mindsets or the habits that they need to. But you might sense that pushing them too hard or too soon simply won't work. So you have to let them crash and burn a little bit. You have to let them show up at a demo where they're putting their results on the mat to say, here's what we built. Here's the quality we've arrived at. And have someone say, this isn't what we expected. This isn't right. This isn't good enough. And that one sometimes hurts a little. Well, you have to let it hurt, but you also need to protect the team from the cost of that failure. The way I see it, if you want to let people fail, and we always talk about failure and agility, you have to prearrange and pre-agree with whoever the product owner is, whoever the stakeholders are, that at the beginning, this won't go very fast and it won't go very well. So you have to let your team become agile, make all the groovy mistakes in the process so that they can learn, grow, and deliver better. If you've done that, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with letting their belly scrape the gravel as they make mistakes and find their legs together as a team. Here's another thing you need to do. This one's on you. You need to resist shifting course too early and too often. When things aren't working, when nothing's sticking, when behaviors aren't changing, don't panic. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Be comfortable with feeling a little bit like a bunch of hacks at the very beginning. This will get better with patience, with time, with practice. And here's the easiest thing you can do to get comfortable with that. You need to be able to get out of your head and see real progress, however small, celebrating small wins, noticing that even though this whole thing isn't great yet, the things that we have changed, the things that we have practiced, have made a difference. We're getting more agile, we're getting better, and we're congealing as a team. We're seeing enough of the right mindsets and right actions to say that something's improving. We're winning, even at a very, very small level. So it is worth investing and continuing next week, next sprint. That's all you need to do is get to the next sprint. Now here's what persistence means. Persistence means you never take your foot off the gas, especially in the beginning, because if you walk away for just a moment, gravity will pull everyone back down to their comfortable, safe ways of being. And once you've done that, it becomes twice as hard to move them out of their old patterns and into new ones, because now they have a reinforced sense that where they came from is better than where we're going. You have to maintain and sustain that constant small upward progress. It also means that we as a crew never stop learning. Learning about Agile, learning about Scrum, whatever your framework happens to be, and we never stop learning about ourselves and each other. Training, in my mind, should be a non-event. We should be consistently and continuously applying new ideas, new wisdom, and new inspiration to help us stay the course. Now, persistence also means that you can never turn your back on or give up on yourself or your team. I've seen it happen where we simply lose faith in the ability of the team to change. Sometimes we think that the personalities are too strong. Sometimes we think that they're too legacy, that they're too buried in their old ways of doing things, and there's nothing that can be done to make this team agile. You can never do that. The minute you do that, you start creating an us versus them, agile versus non-agile, people who get it versus people who don't kind of attitude. And that will cause failure more than any other negative attitude or belief. Which brings me to my next point. You need to meet people exactly where they're at and accept what is. We would love to have people who are automatically and intuitively agile thinking folks. The reality is, it rarely happens that way. We almost never get a crew of people who are on board in line and totally stoked to do things like abandon business plans and BRDs and embrace failure, uncertainty, and constant change. It is, even 20-odd years after its inception, a very new way, a very different way of thinking. We need to appreciate how much of a struggle that can be for folks to move away from and into something new at a level that's required to get back to a place of high performance. I talk a lot about how there's a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of comfort wrapped up in switching from the old way of doing things to a new way of doing things. So you have to be appreciative of the fact that this is a different kind of ride for everyone you meet. Learn to figure out where they're at and accept the fact that it is your job to help them move We can't just sit and grumble about the fact that they're not ready, they're not enlightened, and that this isn't easy for them. Which dovetails nicely into my next point. You need multiple ways to get the job done. Part of your growth as a leader, part of your duty to be persistent and consistent is to continuously experiment with different ways of explaining things, different ways of modeling things, different ways of working together, different ways of seeing things, different ways of arriving at the same result. When the first one doesn't work, you can't just lean back on your textbook. You have to be willing to try something else. Sometimes this means just asking the team what else might work here, but it also might mean reaching out to the community, to your colleagues, to the different resources available on the internet to find out what other tools could be in your toolkit that might help bring about change, or at least a different result. And finally, the most important point about persistence is that you and your team, all of the individuals that you influence, need to see and understand that success is a result of small and consistent effort over time. It is never a big bang result. So there's never a single Agile event, conference, or learning experience that will radically transform a team overnight. It will be continuously pulling seeds from a growing canon of knowledge, inspiration, case studies, experience, and wisdom that you can deploy on a daily basis to help the team just make it through the day. And if they make it through the day today, they'll have learned something. They'll have seen with their own eyes the impact of the changes that you're making, even if they're very, very, very small. And hopefully, that's enough to get them to try something more, something new, something even bigger and more courageous tomorrow. That's it for this week, guys. I hope this helps you. You can reach out at badassagile.com, find me on Twitter at badass_agile, and on Instagram at badassagile. I look forward to seeing you next time, and until then, stay badass.